Thank you for joining us for Working Through the Word, a ministry of the Richmond Church of Christ. Let's join our pulpit minister, Mike Johnson, as he brings today's lesson.
Every moment of every day, we are making decisions. We are choosing to do one thing or another, or not to do one thing or another. There are probably different ways to categorize decisions, but I want to give you two categories to think about for a few minutes. One is the decisions we make without much conscious thought. This is just who we are and what we do. And then there are those decisions that come after much conscious thought. It takes a lot of time and energy, and it's the more difficult of the decision making. I want to think about those two today as we continue noticing moments like these. The point of this theme for the year has been for us to remember that in every moment of life, God is there. In every moment that we encounter, we have an opportunity to encounter God. It is a moment for us. And there are all kinds of moments. Certainly we can't, in our time, consider every single moment this year, but we can certainly consider a few, and one of those is our moments of decision. Let's begin with those moments of decision that happen without much conscious thought. It's just what we do. It is, if you will, on the one hand, a habit. You just do it. There have been times, maybe in your life, I know they have been in mine, when I will sort of wake up and go, wait a minute, did I do that? Like driving. Did I stop at that traffic light or not? I don't remember passing so-and-so. I do it every day, but today I don't know that I did because we just do it. This is what we do. It becomes habitual. Now that can be a bad thing because sometimes we just do things habitually without any conscious thought, and therefore there's a problem. But I'm talking not about habitual things. I'm talking about things that we decide to do without having to defend a lot, because this is what we believe. This is who we are as people of God. Our text in Deuteronomy 30 was Moses' challenge to the people of God about the things that they should not really give much conscious thought to, meaning this is who they are. They're people of God. Did you notice when he challenged them, God through Moses said, I've given you this. I've given you life and good. I've given you death and evil. Now, how long do you have to think about that? How long do you have to decide? Now, do I want to have life and things that are good, or do I want to have death and things that are evil? Let me think about that for a while. Not many. Now, these people certainly didn't need to think long. If you will recall, these are the people who were the next generation from the group, their ancestors, who had come to the promised land the first time and said, we're not going in. We can't win the war. We're not strong enough. And God said, fine. Just go back in the wilderness for 40 years. And you can wander around until everybody who came to this promised land and said, we're not going in, 20 years old and older, have passed away. The next generation can go in. This group should not have had to think very long, because all they had seen for their lives was people who had chosen death and evil. And they died in the wilderness. And now they stand the second time at the promised land that God had already given. And He said, now it's yours. You want life and good? Equaling go get the land. Or death and evil like your ancestors did. There's not much to think about, is there? We're doing it. Because it was obvious to them that there were things in life that were good and honorable and brought great blessing. And there were things that brought harm and evil and terrible things into their lives. It's just like us. There are things we know that bring good. There are things we know that bring blessing. And there are things we know that bring cursing. Not much thought. We want the good and the life. Well, here's the question. Without much real conscious thought, who we are, our convictions, our principles, this is who we are. How will that affect Sunday morning when there's a time scheduled to worship in an assembly of God's people? Do I have to think about that? Do you have to get up in the morning and have a family vote that says, are we going or not? How about Sunday night or Wednesday night or other times when do we have to decide after much conscious thought which would be better and which is not quite as good? How about in our time of worship? Without much conscious thought, do you just sing? I'm not saying don't concentrate on the singing. I'm saying, okay, everybody's singing. Am I going to sing today or not? Am I going to pray while prayer is being offered? Am I going to listen while the Word of God is being delivered? Am I going to be one who participates in giving? I want to have some thought about that for a while. I don't think I want to, maybe. Which is life and good? Which is death and evil? What about being a Bible student during the week, not just when we're assembled? What about living Christian principles when I'm on the job, not just when I'm around Christian people who might see me? We could spend hours upon hours asking the question, who am I? Without much conscious thought. In other words, these are my principles, these are my values, and this is how I'm going to be, and I don't have to get up at every single time and say, will I or will I not? Because I already made that choice. I hope nobody gets up every day and says, do I still want to be married? I made that decision. That's how it's going to be. I hope nobody gets up every day and says, do I want to be God's child today or not? Without much conscious thought. That's who we are. And that's who we should be. But in the second place, there are those things that we have to make decisions, and they are not things that can be done without a lot of conscious thought. I need to consider these things. This is one way that I think we can interpret what James is saying in James chapter 1. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work and be complete, that you may be complete and perfect, lacking nothing. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach. It will be given to him, but let him ask in faith, without doubting. For he who doubts is like a wave of the sea driven by the wind and tossed. Let not that man think he will receive anything from the Lord, for he is double-minded and unstable in all his ways. We look at this passage and we think, this is about difficult trials in life, and we agonize. You know, the decisions that we have to make after clear, consistent, deep thought all come, it seems, at a time of trial. If I didn't need to consider it, if I didn't need to research, if I didn't need to spend deep time thinking about it, it wouldn't be a trial. It wasn't a trial, probably, unless you have little kids, to get ready and be in Bible class today and worship. Difficult, but not a trial. It wasn't that you were fighting yourself to be here or not to be here. But there are trials that we battle. We don't know what the decision is. We don't know what we're going to do. Notice what James says. James says this is a valuable time. It is a valuable time because in this decision-making time, and as you consider deeply, and as you think long and hard, you're going to develop patience. And every one of us could probably use a dose of patience every now and then, especially while this fly keeps doing that thing. For those of you that need more patience, I'm going to send him your way because I'm okay. But this text also says that this idea of going through the trial is what matures you. When we go through the decision-making process, it gives us a maturity that we didn't have until we started going through it. Do you remember the time, those of you that did, when you're trying to decide, number one, where am I going to go to college? And now I'm in college, what am I going to study? What is going to be my program? And maybe you spent quite a bit of time, some research, some visiting around, listening, because it is a critical moment that will affect the rest of your life, probably. These trials give patience and maturity. But notice what he also says. Here is how you do it. If you want to work through the process of making a difficult decision in a moment of trial, James says you do three things. Number one, you ask God, I want to be a person in time of difficulty, in time of trial, without really thinking about it, God just pops in my head. I would rather it not be. After much thought and consideration, I think I'll ask God. But I admit that there are times when, overwhelmed by something, God doesn't just immediately pop into my head. He should. Because James says that's what you do. You ask God in the midst of that trial. Ask God in faith. Faith is accepting what's coming without seeing it. That's how Hebrews 11 describes it. Faith says, I know where I have been, and I know what has been, therefore I can trust God of what will be. He's helped me in the past. I know He'll help me in the future. That's faith. Not because I see the answer of how He's going to help, but because I see the one who is going to help. And in faith, I accept it. But third, James says, ask in faith without doubting. Let's make sure we understand this passage, because I've heard it taught wrong, and I've probably taught it wrong myself. James is not saying, here's what you want, ask God, you'll get it. That's not what he's saying. Because oftentimes what we want is not what God wants, or it's not a part of His will for us. What's he saying? What's he tying it to? This whole text is tied to wisdom. What does he say? You ask God in faith without doubting for wisdom, and He'll give it to you. So that in the middle of my trial of decision, in the middle of my time when I am really not sure what to do or how to do, and I'm giving it much thought and much consideration, if I have asked God in faith without doubting, He will give me a measure of wisdom that I can use to make that decision. And part of the wisdom is knowing that there are other people that I can go to, and I can get information from them that will help me with the decision that I'm needing to make. Those decisions that need to be made after much intense conscious thought, those are the times of trial that causes us pause because we don't know what to say. We don't know what to do. And James says, get the wisdom that comes from God and you can get an answer. So, what do we need to know about this trial of decision making? What are some things that we need to remember with respect to that process? Let me give you these few. Number one, it is not always the case that there's only one decision to be made in that trial. If I am looking for there's only one decision and any other decision is going to be wrong, I'm going to put undue pressure and stress on me that doesn't need to be there. That's part of what the wisdom will do. The wisdom will help me to see that there might be better decisions, but they're not necessarily only one decision. If I'm looking for one decision, maybe I'm not going to find it. But if I'm willing to accept that there might be more than one answer that I'm looking for, the decision-making process might be much easier. Number two, after having involved God for the wisdom and you make a decision, be decisive. Go for it. Not because you know you're always right, but because you've been through the process properly. And in that process, with the wisdom of God, this is the decision you've made. So go for it. But when you find out in going for it that you're wrong, be willing to say, I'll start over. When God gives us wisdom in those moments of trial, He is not guaranteeing us that we're always going to make the right choice or make the right decision. Therefore, be willing to say, I made a mistake, and I'm going to back up, start over. And then number 4, don't allow that poor decision, don't allow that decision that you were wrong to make you decision shy. I'm not going to make another decision the rest of my life because I failed one time. And I'm just going to do what somebody else tells me to do, or I'm going to do nothing. Well, that's not the way to live. I don't want to be decision shy. Number 5, there are going to be consequences to every decision I make. And I need to be mature enough to say, I'm going to take those consequences. There will be great consequences for great decisions, and there will be some poor consequences for the decisions that I make that are not as good. But I have to make decisions. I can't just float, like James said, letting the winds and the waves of life toss me around. That's not counting on God. But finally, number 6, learn from the poor decisions. Learn. Ezra and I were talking last night about his trip to Germany and going to a concentration camp where they have left it like it was. And he showed me the pots and pans that had been taken from those people in the camp. He showed me the canisters of the gas that was used to kill those people. Why would you do that? Because those who don't know the past are destined to what? Repeat it. Learn from poor decisions. Can you imagine? Good people in Germany who have to listen to what others have said about them because of their past. But we're learning. We make poor decisions. Say to yourself, now what can I learn from my failure? I want to give you 3 closing thoughts in the decision-making process. 1, there are some things that are absolutely, unequivocally, and unchangeably true with respect to eternity. 2 Thessalonians 1, 6 through 10. To give those who are troubled rest with us when the Lord Jesus is revealed from heaven in flaming fire, taking vengeance on those who do not know God, do not obey. But then he says, for those who are obedient, what's coming? Rest. There are some things that are just true. And the only decision that I need to make is whether I'm going to accept it or not. There are other decisions spiritually that I have to make on a daily basis. Colossians 3:17, it was Paul who said to them, whatever you do, notice, whatever you do all to the glory of God. So every day, I am making decisions that have spiritual consequences because I am every day glorifying God or not through my decisions. But the final point about decision making that we all need. If I make my will, or if I make God's will my will, I will be in God's will. Colossians 1:3-4. The one, in this case, decision that I make without much conscious thought, hopefully, is that I want to be in God's will. And when I'm there, my will becomes submitted to His will. And there is where I find peace. If you're struggling with a big decision today, God is willing to help. And He's placed a lot of people right here that could be in your life to give you help and strength in that decision making. And if you need us to help you with that, we'd love to know about it. If you've not made the decision to obey Jesus, to accept the sacrifice that leads you to say, whatever I need to do to be right, I'm going to do it, culminating in baptism for the forgiveness of sins. If you've not made that decision, you have made another decision. You've made the decision not at the moment to be saved. Today, if you need to make a good decision, that we can help you. Will you come as we stand and sing?
We hope that you enjoyed today's broadcast, brought to you by the Richmond Church of Christ. We are located at 1500 Lancaster Road in Richmond, Kentucky. We meet at 9 a.m. each Sunday morning for Bible class, followed by our morning worship service held at 10 a.m. Our Sunday evening service is held at 6 p.m. Our midweek Bible study is held on Wednesday at 7 p.m. If you are in the area, we would love to have you as our honored guest. Thanks for listening.